Struggling or wrestling is everyone's experience during their lifetime. Nobody is exempt. We contend with our situations and with other people. We even contend with ourselves. And the Apostle Paul wrote extensively on that inner battle. Many of the great saints of old fought tooth and nail with their tendencies to sin. Finally, if the truth were known, we also contend with heavenly messengers, as Jacob did. We sometimes resist God's will, unfortunately. Other times we struggle against the enemy. The Zayin represents this besieged but defiant condition, and the spirit behind it, both the struggle itself and the force behind it. The stirring of faith at the vision of, say, the loveliness of God in Christ Jesus, and the consequent pursuit of that loveliness. The Zayin represents the whole glorious struggle. Do you remember the gap in the left-hand side of the hay? It represented the constant awareness we have of what should be represented by the top horizontal, the ideal, and what is the real. And the gap represents the Zayin. The Zayin lives within that gap. It's the struggle to realize our ideals, to see the loveliness of Jesus, and then to try to realize that loveliness in our own lives. It's a struggle, and it's a glorious struggle. The Zayin isn't always a comfortable letter, you see. It won't allow us to slumber and settle for the status quo. It's a persistent morning alarm that demands response. It will therefore come as no surprise to learn that many Hebrew words of action commence with this letter. I'm going to write these in red because red must be the colour of action. Za'af means to be angry or to boil up. Now, a lot of Christian teaching doesn't allow for the possibility that there is a place for anger in the Christian life, but there is. In fact, the sages teach that spiritual insight cannot be obtained without anger. And this anger should be directed mostly against myself and my tendency to be negligent regarding the spiritual matters, the unseen, the eternal things, whilst being quite diligent in the things of this world. Paul said that he pummeled himself. He occasionally gave himself a good talking to. You know, we mustn't mistake passivity for patience. And here's another one. Zuar. Zuar means to shake off. And here's another one similar to it. Zara means to scatter. You know, sometimes we need to shake off, to shake off lethargy. Have you ever noticed that when you decide to pray, you suddenly feel tired or hungry? I used to get it regularly. I still occasionally get it. And then one day I recognized the enemy within and I learned to shake it off. Other times I need to scatter my anxieties. I come to pray and I've got all these anxieties in my mind and I need to learn to scatter those anxieties. You know, I see them as a group of skittles in a bowling alley. And my praise to God is a ball that sends them flying. Now, there are terms for the occasional violence in the natural world which begin with the Zayin. For instance, Zerem. Zerem is tempest. Great word, isn't it? Zerem, tempest. And then we've got Zalal, which is earthquake. And finally, we've got this interesting little word here. I've got enough room here. Zake. And zake means a flash of fire. A flash of fire. All of these words have got
what I would call a holy impatience to get the job done. They're all words of action. The Zayin makes the sound of a bee, you see, zzz, and it can sting like a bee. But we also draw the Z sound, the Z sound, over somebody who's asleep. You know, in cartoons you see the Zs over somebody asleep, because it speaks of rest and contentment. And so the Zayin has another side, and here are a couple of examples. Where shall I put them? Over here. Yeah, I'll do it here. Zayit, and that means olive tree, and the oil, the olive oil itself, Zayit. Now that's an ancient symbol, of course. Oil is an ancient symbol of the Spirit of the Lord. And the substance of oil brings soothing coolness and relief to skin weathered by burning climates. You know, at the end of the day, in the Middle East, they would wash and apply oil to their skin, and it made them feel cool and refreshed. So, Zayit, olive tree and oil. And finally, Ziz, and Ziz means abundance or fullness, abundance or fullness.
We all experience struggle, and if anybody doesn't, maybe he needs to join the fight. Fight the good fight with all thy might. Christ is thy strength and Christ thy right. Lay hold on life, and it shall be thy joy and crown eternally. So said the old hymn writer. When the contest with some trying situation is over, we find an even sweeter rest in the presence of the Lord. The sleep of a labouring man is sweet. Ecclesiastes 5:12. The fight can be pretty tiring, like a long day spent out in the bitter cold of a winter day. But lo, the winter is past, the rain is over and gone. The flowers appear on the earth. The time of the singing of birds has come, and the voice of the turtle dove is heard in our land. That's the Song of Solomon, chapter 2, verse 11. The Zayin represents the conflict and the contentment. And we're reminded of that greatest contest of all time, the crucifixion of Jesus. His agonies were described prophetically 1,000 years before the cross in Psalm 22. O my God, I cry in the daytime, but thou hearest not, and in the night season, and am not silent. That's verse 2. The 6-hour suffering of Jesus on the cross divides into two parts. The first 3 hours were the daytime that was mentioned in that Psalm 22. And the second 3 hours, when darkness covered the earth, is the night season. Jesus cried out to God during both seasons. But his sufferings end, and the next psalm, Psalm 23, described him arriving at the green pastures and still waters of verse 2. The Zayin includes the conflict and the satisfaction of victory. The goodness and mercy of the Lord is restored forever. Verse 6. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. Psalm 30, verse 65. Jesus has taught us our light affliction, which is but for a moment, worketh for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory, while we look not at the things which are seen, for the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen, they are eternal. 1 Corinthians 4:17 following.
Ziv is the month of flowers. The month of flowers. And a Zarach is a sunbeam. A Zemer is a gazelle, because it brings to mind as the way it walks, the way the gazelle walks, brings to mind the gentle plucking of a stringed instrument, which is a zamar, stringed instrument. The Zayin then, like our walk with the Lord, is full of surprises.